What's your most money-consuming hobby? Write in the comments what you think about this. Enjoy the show. Story 1. She's shooting pool. I'll go out to my local bar and play pool 6 nights a week. I've made friends with many of the staff and the owner. Even though I can pretty much play for free, I end up spending around 50, 80 bucks a night. That shit adds up. And my apartment has become a neglected place. I need to prioritize better, but depression is a beast. Story 2. DJing. If you want the high-end setup used in clubs, you're looking at damn near $10K baseline just for decks and a mixer. The style of DJing I personally do is closer to 20. If you own your own speaker setup, even more on top of that. Every track a DJ plays, $1.50 minimum. I generally play 70-ish tunes an hour. Then you get into the time it consumes, which is far, far more than people see. Story 3. Legos. I never did Legos as a kid, got into them as an adult when my son did. I marvel at every set. And we have some giant ones now. They're not cheap, but the quality control, customer service, attention to detail, and tiny little Easter eggs only the builder can see have me a fan for life. It also had an incredibly positive effect on my mental health and anxiety, which was a very unexpected but welcome bonus. Story 4. Lego, 100%. Had a pretty cool collection as a kid. Had a couple dark years after Bionicle was canceled. Very briefly got back interest in 2015. But it wasn't until COVID hit in 2020 and we were all locked inside that I really started diving back in, bought all the missing figures in my collection, ended up with more than a few spares, opened a Bricklink shop, and that kind of gave me an excuse to just keep buying and buying. But truth is, I haven't been able to move nearly as much as I was hoping, mostly because I've just become too busy with other stuff. And now I have a literal storage room full of moving crates worth of Bionicle, Exo-Force, Star Wars, and CCBS that I have no clue how I'm going to sell. There was also that time I got into fragrances and spent an obscene amount of money in just a few months. But that kind of came and went, and my collection could last me a lifetime. Story 5. I have a useless farm. I love animals. I love my chickens, ducks, geese, goats. Next are coon pigs. End goal is mini Highland cows. But I'm not actually using my goats for milk, nor will I be butchering the pigs, much like I don't with the poultry. I don't bring in any money from all these animals. Sure, I could sell the eggs, but I just give them to family and friends. The fencing/housing/feed/vet bills are a lot, which is why I'm slowly adding in stages to make sure I can fund each addition up front and not be in debt for a new fence when a barn needs repairing. But they bring me so much joy and laughter. All I ever want to do is be home playing with my sweet, hairy/furry/feathered ones. Story 6. At this point, DoorDash. I thought the prices on those services was ridiculous, and then the pandemic hit and I was totally willing to do it. Lockdown ended and COVID faded and I should have stopped, but I'd gotten used to the convenience and had numbed myself to the cost, and now I'm just used to it. Way too much money. Story 7. EDM. I live in one of the premier U.S. cities for the genre, so there's shows ranging from $3,100 every weekend, and I rarely decide to skip a DJ I enjoy. We have a few local festivals that are always a good time, and I travel annually for Ultra Miami, and assuming it's as advertised for my first time this weekend, we'll start doing so for Tomorrowland, now that it's financially feasible to do so. Skiing is the other one, but it's not that bad on an annual basis anymore. I have multiple sets of quality, long-lasting clothing and gear now that shouldn't need replacing often, like once a decade. So only gear expense is new skis when I tear up a set, which is every 3-4 seasons. Season pass us under $1,000 for now, which is great when putting in 30-plus days on the mountain. Story 8. Baking cooking. I make a variety of different things, but I obsess over pizza and chocolate chip cookies. I make a few dozen batches of each every year, always striving for perfection. My wife recently asked me if I'd prefer a weekend away or a pizza oven for an anniversary gift. The rock box should arrive next week. Story 9. Crocheting and knitting. Crocheting helps my brain to slow down. It's soothing. Yarn prices can be as volatile in pricing as oil. Whether it's acrylic or cotton, I use the cheapest yarn I can get my hands on to make shawls and blankets for people that don't have others around to give them a hug, something nice, soft, and soothing. Most of the time, they get an 80-grid blanket or 60-grid prayer shawl instead. It can get quite costly. Story 10. Fly fishing. The gear alone is expensive. Then comes auxiliary gear like camping equipment. After that comes the travel expenses and maintenance on my car from the wear and tear of remote mountain roads. Then comes the expense of paying for thoughtful dates for my wife and I to make up for being gone all weekend. It all adds up, all worth it. Story 11. I try to create music with sample libraries. I'm not going to include the MIDI controller piano, which was ages ago. I think the thing is, Since solo instruments tend to be around $90 to $100, it makes more logical sense to generally chase after ensemble packs. But those are generally more. I always start with the Miroslav 2 Classic Edition, which I think is $100 now. I don't think the samples aged particularly well. I've sometimes had to use plugins to muffle the tape hiss, but there's a warmth and resonance that's there that even better samples tend to lack. Audio Imperia's Nucleus, Light, has a decent amount of very real and bright-sounding instruments. Also, the Sound Iron Choir voices are really good. I use Logic, but I'm speculating on if the Contacker plugins work with Ardor or Fruity Loops. I don't know about this one, I just wanted to throw this out there for non-Mac users. Story 12 Home Assistant. Currently got at least one smart bulb in each room, smart plugs, motion sensors, wall-mounted dashboards, temperature and humidity sensors in every room, and I'm currently looking into IP cameras. Hasn't cost me too much money yet, but it's going to rack up, especially as this hobby has now branched into wanting to ditch the cloud entirely and create various private storage servers. Story 13, I collect Amiibo Nintendo NFC figurines. They're not as bad as something like Funko Pops, as Nintendo only makes new ones every once in a while, but Amiibo tend to skyrocket in value over time, especially if they aren't reprinted frequently, are exclusive to certain things, region bundles, etc. This means pretty much all of them that aren't sold currently on Nintendo's website or in the few stores that still sell them are at the least a bit over MSRP, like maybe $30 versus the initial $16, if not far higher, especially over time. That adds up after a while, but I make sure to space out purchases somewhat. For the most drastic examples, look up Amiibo like Kyubi, One-Eyed Rathalos and Ryder, Girl, Yarn Poochie, Naviru, Gold Mega Man, Metroid, Big Yarn Yoshi, etc. I don't own any of these currently, but if I want to collect them all, I would have to. I did choose to ignore the Amiibo cards and wristbands at least, although I did get the cereal box because I thought it was funny. Story 14. Magic tricks get shockingly expensive. You subscribe to magazines, buy instructional books, videos, DVDs, subscriptions, refills for things that you need more of, like playing cards. The industry calls it the magic bug, because once you're bitten, all of your disposable and some non-disposable goes into it. And that's not even considering getting into stage illusions, where any kind of custom build will be many thousands. Story 15, Rally Racing. My adult son started a few years ago, and it is so expensive. Not just the cars, but the parts too. We're in the US, and many of the parts are shipped from overseas. Also the entry fees, traveling hundreds of miles to an event, food, lodging. But for all the preparation and expense that goes into it, he absolutely loves it. It's a comparatively small community, full of great people and friendly competition. It's become a family adventure too. He and my husband work on the car together. At rallies, his dad is the crew chief, in charge of an entire crew of one, himself, LOL. His spouse and our other son have been co-drivers. I stay home and take care of all the animals. Story 16, Food, but hear me out. I had training as a classical chef a few decades ago, and though I made a career change that has zero relation to haute cuisine, I still create, just for myself or guests, with top-tier ingredients. It isn't about showing off. It's about feeding myself and others the way that they should be fed. Hate it? Cool. Adore a dish you've never known existed? Awesome. Revel in a much better version of what you thought your grandmother perfected? So be it. But if you come to dinner at my table, you aren't getting nuggies and frou fries. But yeah, proper ingredients don't tend to get cheaper. Edit. I reread myself and I sound like a vegan crusader, minus the vegan cult indoctrination. I admit it, I got fired up there and my heart raced, and I got all righteous inside for a sec. Story 17. I'll answer for my husband, his shop, tools, OMG, the amount of tools, drum sander, table saw, CNC machine, laser cutter, all shapes and sizes of hammers, a dozen screwdrivers, and clamps. How can a man have so many clamps? We spend easily over $5,000 a year, but I feed his habit because it makes him happy, and a happy husband makes a happy life. Story 18, having pets. My monthly expenditure on just basic supplies, food, bedding runs like $350 USD a month. Literally costs me more per month to maintain my pets than it does to own my house. No mortgage, taxes, $250 a month, and average maintenance costs have like $70 a month. The only expense that comes even remotely close is the internet bill, and that's only because gigabit with no competitors in the area. Even the HDDs, networking gear, etc. to run a Plex server and Wi-Fi coverage that extends to the back corners of nearly 500 acres don't add up to the cost of having pets. Story 19. I am a magician. I have spent 25 years studying my hobby. If you just learn card tricks, it's a very cheap hobby. But if you get into anything else, it can become expensive fast. Some tricks or even just a manuscript explaining how to do a trick can sometimes be $200 to $700 if you get into the really underground clever things. At this point, I have the largest room in my house dedicated to magic. 6 bookshelves, 3 utility shelves holding props, tables everywhere, etc. The wife doesn't mind because she gets the entire upstairs for her work office and art studio. I also have an entire woodworking shop with a lathe, drill, bandsaw, countless hand tools, etc. Also, I can make props. There are also conventions every year, magic clubs, and other events that cost money. I'm at the point I'm starting to perform for money and sell and make props, so it is finally starting to pay off, but it gets expensive fast. There's even a running joke amongst magicians that says, "When I die, please don't let my wife sell my magic for what I told her I paid for it." Story 20, building electronics. I build reproductions of vintage pro audio gear like preamps, equalizers, and compressors. Also pedals, modular synthesizers, and so on. The tools and test gear have run me a few thousand, and I've spent a few hundred on parts over the last few years easy. But I'm saving thousands over buying retail or used versions. Just the EQs I've built would have cost me $5K. The DIY versions came out to about $2,200 total. But I also have a huge pile of mistakes to troubleshoot, as well as things I bought or picked up free with the idea I'd fix them. That works great sometimes. My monitor amp cost me $40, and it took 5 minutes to fix. Score. Story 21, not nearly as bad as some here, but hiking. Hiking gear, including backpack, water bladders, poles, and all of the necessities. Then clothing, including shoes, which are about a once-a-year purchase depending on how much you do. Socks, the good ones cost $1. And pants, leggings, coats, jackets, waterproof gear for you and your pack. If you're bringing your dog, they need a backpack for long hike, water, food dishes, snacks. Then, after all this, constantly replacing sunscreen, bug spray, permethrin. Not to mention when you're out west, you need to carry bear spray. And this is just a hike near where you live. Airfare, hotel/motel/camping space, car rental if you want to go elsewhere in the U.S. that you have to fly to. Story 22, taking music lessons, both flute and piano. It's about $500 a month if I'm lucky, and by lucky, I mean I find a reasonable teacher. Overall, I'm constantly aware of how expensive it is, and currently do bi-weekly piano lessons and no flute because we are on one income. My wife crochets and knits, which adds up because yarn isn't cheap, especially when it's cotton and from local stores that are not Michael's. Story 23. I collect plushies, but I only like the ones that can be won from crane games. There's a large arcade in my area called Round One, and I only go there for the crane games. I spend a minimum of $100 each time I go, and sometimes I win multiple things, and sometimes I walk away with nothing. I've amassed quite the plushie pile over the years, and it has to be in person too. None of those online crane games where they ship you your prizes. I one day hope to travel to Japan because they have a higher cultural focus on crane games, and I just want to spend a large amount of time and money winning plushies and bringing them back with me. Story 24, probably PC gaming. I build $4K computers every other year, but given how much I play, tilde 10 HRs a week, I get my money's worth. I usually gift my old parts to friends and family, though, so it could be cheaper if I sold them to subsidize new builds. Close second is Magic the Gathering, though I've been using proxies for years now, as paying $50 plus for a single copy of a card is stupid. Story 25, definitively hunting. After reviewing the top posts, I'm really surprised that nobody mentioned it, save for one saying target shooting. Since I hunt deers, mooses, wild turkeys, gooses, and various small games in various locations in Quebec, Canada, it means a lot of equipments. The first years include dedicated firearms for the various game, currently 12 guns and rifles of various calibers and 2 crossbows, all the various clothing/boots/globes/camo $premium, adapted to the seasons, an off-road vehicle and trailer, all sorts of gears that last a few years before you lose it or worn out, ideally a piece of land, and building hideouts on it. Then yearly costs, permits and licenses, ammunitions, scents, baits, decoys. My yearly trip to my favorite outfitter spot, personally Isle Anticosti for deers, all sorts of useless gadgets that are trendy or make you think you'll be a better hunter. Fortunately, I have a wonderful wife who understands and accepts my passion. Story 26. Hobbies are as expensive as you want them to be. I wait for deals on games and save games for Xmas birthday gift ideas. But Magic the Gathering? It turns out I want that hobby to be expensive. A real eye-opener was an expensive card I wanted when I first started playing. I really wanted Maelstrom Wanderer for a deck, but it was just way too expensive. I recently saw that card in a display case for $10. Oh man, It must have come way down in price. That used to be a white whale card for me. Nah, it turns out that $10 for one card has just become way more acceptable as the years go by. Story 27, scuba diving. The ocean becomes an addiction once you have established a relationship with it. Always new and better equipment because, hey, you are trusting your life to it, right? Then you have to spend $5,000 every 3 or 4 months to go get your fix. But it's therapy. I have never been more relaxed than on the bottom of the ocean, drifting slowly over a reef, totally buoyant and content. Story 28. While relative to other hobbies, it doesn't cost much but my drink fridge. We're recovering alcoholics, so I like to keep fun NA drinks. Think Poppy, Olipop, Body Armor, Spindrift, Fairlife protein shakes, etc. I have a full-size fridge in my garage committed to nothing but these drinks. It's also fun to offer drinks to the garbage men who work in our neighborhood garden, UPS guys, etc., and have them be able to pick from a really fun selection. I can't get you a beer, but just about anything else? I gotcha. Story 29. Plants. I want them all. The cost of plants isn't just pricey, but you want to get supplies to amend your soil, drops and spray to keep bugs at bay, plant stakes, pots, diamond tip drill bit in case you have to drill your own drainage holes, plastic pots, if you do a pot in a pot type situation, so you can see when it's time to repot, and clear pots show you how you're watering, plant stands, fertilizer and water, and your time in caring for your plants. Just to name a few. We have over 200 plants, not including propagations we're trying to root. It takes between 2-3 days to water everything. Story 30, teacups. I have sets that were gifted to me by an old friend. My great-grandma's 100 wedding china set lined in gold, Japanese formal ceremony, tea set still in box, a miniature tea set from Europe and more. But I love individual teacup and saucer. I will buy all of them if I let myself. I have espresso cups, Germany, London, American, Japan made. I have regular china, bone china, my favorite but the scariest to hold, ceramic child sets, my original set and others, and porcelain. I've spent anywhere from a couple of dollars on them to $1.40 is. I have one cup that I spent $100 plus that I bought in a group for my birthday one year. I have no room for them all, no way to display, so I'm looking at curio cabinets and shelves which are also not cheap. I just want all the pretty cups. If I buy one, I'm like a drug addict and will buy a ton more instantly, and I have to force myself to stop, which makes me cranky, shaky, stressed like I'm on a drug withdrawal. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked the video, like it, be sure to write comments and share your stories.